and thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Athar Hussein Khan. I'm the Secretary General of the European Business Aviation Association, EBAA. We represent more than 700 business aviation companies in Europe and beyond, including aircraft operators, FBOs, manufacturers, and service providers. I'm really delighted to welcome you to our third and final virtual roundtable, organized by EBAA's Associate Member Advisory Council, AMAC for short. AMAC advises the EBAA Board of Governors on areas of interest to the membership and also acts as the bridge between EBAA and our associate members. Consisting of several committees, each serving individual sectors, AMAC is also an incubator for projects that have a real added value for the wider business aviation community. Now, while many of you today joined last week and even maybe the week before that roundtable on rethinking regulation in business aviation, I wanted to take just a few minutes to recap what was discussed. During the first part of the roundtable, we focused on rethinking business aviation regulations. Julia Mauri, who's the co-chair of EBAA's Lawyers Committee, argued that an increasingly intricate regulatory environment is not unique to business aviation, and that a growing complexity was something that operators would have to adapt to. Frédéric Jos, also co-chair of the EBAA Lawyers Committee, said that the upcoming cybersecurity directive could have significant repercussions for business aviation. In the second part of last week's webinar, we discussed rethinking business aviation maintenance. David van den Langenberg, who's the head of aviation services for Lux Aviation, said that while EASA provided a common framework for maintenance regulation in Europe, many discrepancies still exist in the way that regulations are applied. And he added that Lux Aviation was piloting a program on an EASA AOC, which may indeed contribute to greater standardization in Europe. The second roundtable then concluded with a session on rethinking business aviation's ground handling. Mark Peters of RA Consulting highlighted that the best way to prepare for the upcoming ground handling regulation was to adopt the requirements of the EBAA directive under EBAA. I would like to thank all the speakers and experts once again for their valuable insights that they've provided us with over the last couple of weeks. Now, as business aviation today emerges from the COVID crisis, it is again the right time to pause and reflect on the future challenges and opportunities for the industry. Today, we'll be digging into the future of business aviation. I look forward to another dynamic and insightful discussion. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the entire EBAA team, as well as all the AMAC chairs and committee members for organizing this webinar series and participating in it. I'll now hand over to my colleague and your host for today, Paul Walsh. He's EBAA's Senior Member Services Manager and also AMAC point of contact for us. Thank you all very much. Paul, please, over to you.
Thank you, Athar, and thank you everybody for joining. So it's just coming up to 6 minutes past 3 on a Thursday afternoon in a busy time of the year. And if you're like me, you'll still have a long to-do list to get through before the weekend arrives. And yet you've taken out your time to join a webinar on the future of business aviation. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for doing that. I think, like most people, the last months have been a mixed experience for EBAA staff. On the one hand, we've been very relevant from an advocacy perspective. We've been very engaged, and I think we've done a lot of good work. But at the same time, we are an events-driven organization, and not being able to meet with and engage with our members has been tough. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think that initiatives like these are really a substitute. But we need to make the best of it. So I would encourage all of you to engage in this webinar, to get involved in the comments. We have a question and answer function. And if you want to participate by actually speaking during the webinar, just put up your hand and I'll try and include you. Today we are rethinking business aviation insurance and rethinking business aviation technology as part of an entire webinar where we are ambitiously rethinking business aviation's future. So I think we're going to start with a poll, and I think that there is certainly a question in the air now in the short term about business travel and what the reduction in business travel is going to be, what its impact is going to be on business aviation. But I just want to know from you guys, in the next 5 years, are we going to see a reduction in business travel, an increase in business travel, or no significant change? I think that this is going to be important for the industry. But listen, if you don't know for sure, it's not as if in 5 years' time we're going to come back and say, listen, you got this wrong when you answered this poll. So just give an educated guess. And so while that poll is up and running, I'm now very happy to introduce our first two panelists today, and we'll be introducing a couple of more in this particular segment as we go through the discussion. But I'm very happy to start with Reece Vowles and Amine Ratl. They're co-chairs of the AMAC Risk Management Committee, and they'll be talking to us today about rethinking business aviation insurance. Reece, I'm going to start with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Paul. Great introduction as always.
My pleasure. Reece, I had a bit of dramatic music to support me as well. So we're going to get to the positive stuff in just a moment. But I think it's fair to say that there were problems in business aviation insurance before that pandemic began.
Absolutely. And just very quickly before I address that specific question, there's one important takeaway that I just want to impart onto the group here, particularly members that are involved in purchasing aviation insurance. And for me, that one takeaway is continue to build strong relationships with your aviation insurance broker and indeed your insurer. This physically distanced world that we've lived in over the past 6 months has, for me, fundamentally shown that we all are in a people relationship business. And with relationships, I think relationships foster understanding. And with understanding, we can start to build some ideas around the different challenges we face and actually how best we can come together to overcome those challenges.
Well, Reece, how have you managed that? I mean, just
very much
what I said in the beginning, without being able to actually meet people. One question I have is, how difficult is it for you to build relationships for people that you didn't know before the pandemic?
To be honest, so we've always had this, we must be in the city, we must be having the face-to-face contact or jumping on an aircraft to go and meet our clients. But over the past 6 months, I've actually had more, albeit virtual, interaction with clients than I would in any normal year, because the technology that we all are using now allows us to very quickly put together and connect different parts of the world over different time zones. And I think that this is going to be a feature for all of our lives going forward, the use of video technology calling. But just to address your question, Paul, with regards to the challenges faced in the business aviation insurance community before the pandemic, it helps to go right back almost 20 years and start with a basic principle of insurance, that the losses of the few are paid for by the premiums of the many. And if you cast your mind all the way back to the horrific events of September the 11th, 2001, the claims that the aviation insurance market paid meant that post 9/11, aviation insurers set about trying to return to profitability. Now, over time, as insurers returned to profitability, that attracted new insurers back into the aviation market. And I use the term market purposefully, as like any market, the trading environment is driven effectively by the basic principle of demand and supply. And in this context, the demand for insurance from operators versus the capacity supplying insurance. Now, following years of 9/11, there was a growing supply of aviation insurers, and that ultimately outpaced a relatively steady demand for aviation insurance. And many of you will recall how this created a landscape that effectively favoured insurance buyers. I've been doing the job that I do for 15 years at my company, and when I started back in 2006, all the way through to maybe the end of 2017, that landscape persisted. But over the past few years, aviation insurers have once again faced another 9/11 moment. And that comes from some huge catastrophic aerospace losses. There's been a large number of satellite losses, and these satellite losses tend to fall in aviation insurers' portfolios. And often, whether it's at launch or post-separation, those losses can run to hundreds of millions of dollars.
And Reece, sorry to interrupt you, but to put it simply, did insurance companies just underestimate the risk in business aviation?
It comes to, again, that basic demand and supply insofar as it was a competitive landscape, remains a competitive landscape today. In terms of underestimating the risk, so I think insurers haven't underestimated the risk because we're very good at dealing with the statistics that are borne out from losses. But we found ourselves in a situation competing against other competitors, and that ultimately led to a very preferential marketplace for buyers.
Does that mean that there was a feeling in the market that people sort of stuck with the market even though things were going bad, even though the statistics weren't showing that there was going to be much sign of an improvement, just for the sake of maintaining market share?
Absolutely. I recall for a number of years the aviation insurance community say it's going to change next year. It's going to change next year, and that went on for a long period of time.
Somebody told me it's like waiting in a queue. You know, you're waiting in a queue for 2 hours, and you think, okay, well, if I leave now, maybe we'll be okay. But maybe I'll just get to the end of it in 2 minutes, so I'll stick in there. Was it that type of a sort of psychology among the insurance community?
Absolutely, because when a lot of insurers were staring down the barrel of we'd lost money this year, we'd lost money last year, the year before. If you believe that it's going to turn the following year, then that would probably be the wrong time to come out. But this persistent loss-making portfolio propagated, and it was only when the catastrophic losses over the past couple of years come through that a number of aviation insurers just said, that's it, we're out.
And so you're with one of the big insurance underwriters, Global Aerospace. Did you guys see this coming?
So we have the benefit that a strength, I guess, that we are a sole aviation insurer. So in terms of the capital that's deployed in our business, we are committed solely and exclusively to aviation. Other insurers who have withdrawn from the aviation class are involved in many different lines of business. So what they're able to do is shut down the aviation portfolio, which would be a very small part on their overall balance sheet, and redeploy their assets in a different class. Whereas Global are concerned, solely focused on aviation, we either get it right or we don't. So that's since 1924 we've been around. I'm hoping for almost another 100 years we'll be around.
So irrespective of what your statistical analysis was showing, you're in it for the long haul.
Absolutely.
Whatever those results are. Now, just to interrupt you again, if we could just get up the results of that poll. Reece, do you think that we're going to see a growth in business travel in the future?
Interesting. Yeah, so I wasn't allowed to answer the poll, but I would have voted with the majority there in terms of an increase in business travel. And
I think that's got to be optimistic at least. And if we can continue to promote the health and safety benefits of business aviation, we're sure to benefit from that. So that poll says that 54% will see an increase in business travel over the next 5 years. 13% no significant change. 33% reduction. Reece, how has COVID-19 exacerbated all of these problems?
So just as insurers were starting to kind of turn their business from loss making for many years to towards trying to turn a profit, COVID strikes. And what that has essentially done is, across all product lines, exposure has dropped significantly. And whilst that's been terrible for a number of operators out there, the immediate reaction, which could reasonably be put forward to us, is, well, surely that's got to help insurers, that there's less flying, so surely that means less claims. But as often, the devil is actually in the data, and what often isn't a newsworthy item would be a small attritional loss, kind of some hanger rash, ground towing incidents. These aren't major news grabbing headlines, but historically they have made up a significant portion of insurers' losses. You've now got a situation where there's a huge accumulation of assets on the ground, and some of those assets have been accumulated in natural disaster areas, which is no good for insurers. Take Hurricane Laura a couple of weeks back. So I read the latest estimates of Hurricane Laura effectively is a $9 billion loss to the insurance market, and the aviation insurance market hasn't escaped a share of that.
Yeah, so maybe, you know, sometimes we can be a bit insular in this industry, just focusing on business aviation itself, but I guess there's a broader macroeconomic picture that you guys are being impacted by as well. So thanks for that, Reece. I'm going to come back to you, and maybe we've been very, let's say, pessimistic so far, doom and gloom. We're going to come on to the positive side of this story shortly as well, but I want to introduce now Amine, Ratl. Amine, you look like you're at the restaurant, but the question, which is fantastic. The question that I have for you, I mean, you, as I understand it, run an insurance company, but you don't like to talk about insurance. Why is that?
Well, first of all, hello everybody. Insurance is an answer. The origin of the problem is the risk and the dynamic of the risk. And indeed, in a platform like AMAC, the best way to organize our action is to move for the future. Look, Reece, hi Reece, by the way. Reece was talking about the losses and the capacity of the market to swallow a loss. And, you know, I felt if I was an operator, like alone in this bloody turmoil. So my position is, yes, indeed, let's move from insurance, where uncontrolled factors can intervene, like the capacity, the money, the stock, the market, the finance, so many factors that out of the risk. So my view is within AMAC, is to allow the members to understand their risk. When they operate a jet, there is, as we did in our brochure, many stages in the risk. You have the risks when the plane is at maintenance, moving at the apron, flying, diverting, landing. So our job in AMAC is to help our friends, operators, and all the people working in this industry, not to look for insurance, but to understand their risk. The risk of the jet, the risk of the third-party liability, the risk of the client, the risk of the flying navigators, pilots, attendants, hostesses.
So we're moving beyond the particular terms, some of the jargon, premiums, reverse return or reverse control, these sort of things, and we're looking at the bigger picture essentially, and that means that we can introduce things like technology and other topics related to that,
of course.
Which have a bearing on it. And so I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that. One in particular, medical screening. I mean, that's a hot topic now, a hot topic for business aviation.
Of course.
Are we going to see more of this, and how is that going to impact the insurance industry?
It's, you see, we are always going to fly, and we will always clients ready to pay for a jet. So today, with technology, I feel that the liability also is increasing because we are more regulated. Technology will allow us to give more security to, for example, in a jet, to have, because of the transmissibility of data, new devices, new technology, so we will be able to foresee or to be aware of the medical condition of the passenger and organize diversion or analyze the level of risk we can have to go through a big problem at 30,000 feet. Today, I think we will certainly increase our strategies in terms of safety and security of passengers, and this is a good news for the pilots because it's always a big stress to see the hostesses coming to see, you know, if it doesn't feel very well, but we don't know exactly what is going on. So yes.
At this stage, are we talking about telemedicine, or is that something
Yeah,
separate?
of course.
That's it.
You know, I was talking about
what's
the
the
risk.
impact here?
Yeah, you know, insurance is just an envelope. When you are talking about insurance, is that maybe you're going to pay a loss in certain conditions. But in health insurance, the loss is a problem because you are the loss. So I'm better reduce the loss as fast as I can. If you have a heart problem in the plane, because I'm a new insurer and I go for technology, I prefer to know immediately what is going on, to help the pilot to know exactly where he can be diverted, prepare on the ground the right ambulances and the staff, and to move the passenger to the right hospital.
So insurance is really having a sort of a fundamental role in a really hands-on role in managing risk.
I hope so. You know,
Listen,
you know, insurers are good to cash premiums, but for the futures, insurer will help their clients to understand their risk. Otherwise, they will not be insurers.
okay, I mean, thank you very much for this.
My pleasure.
We'll get you in just a moment. I'm going to just bring in now Zoe Leiden from Clarvo Consulting, and also representing Falcon. I didn't really know anything about insurance 2 weeks ago. I know just a tiny little bit more now, and much of that is thanks to Zoe. She's my insurance guru. Hi, Zoe, how are you doing?
Hi, Paul, how are you?
Zoe, we need to move on. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more positive now. We need to talk about something a bit more uplifting, but we're going to get there. I'm going to start first of all picking up on what Reece was talking about, and we're talking about innovation. Has there been too much innovation in business aviation insurance, and should the industry be taking a more conservative approach?
No, I don't think that business aviation has been too innovative. I don't really think that insurance entities could be too innovative. Perhaps the only thing that they could do is offer products that are outside the scope of what people understand. But generally, no. I think that the standard insurance market has covered the needs of the business aviation world and the rest of the aviation industry very well.
Well, then just to interrupt you, then why is it that so many companies in business aviation insurance are suffering financial losses and leaving the market?
Well, I was thinking of a number. Reece mentioned $9 billion for the Hurricane Laura that was just very recently. When I did a talk earlier this year, I was prompted to come up with the statistics to tell the audience how big the Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria was in 2017. Between August and September 2017, the insurance market, as of the macro entity, suffered $77 billion. Okay? That's one of the drivers in the pricing and demand that I explained to you, which is why you're so knowledgeable, Paul.
Well, I have 20 minutes to show it all off now, so I'm going to try and cram it all in.
So yeah, people have been standing in the queue for a long time, hoping that their turn will come, and then some entities weren't able to. But there are good news stories about innovation in the market, which I can tell you about.
Please do. I mean, what we want to know, I mean, are there new products? I mean, how should insurance companies essentially be addressing this and trying to
now that
make it business in difficult times?
What we need to do is start looking at insuring intangible assets. Okay, this came up, in fact, this very week. The chairman of Lloyd's is attending a seminar which is going on all day this week by the Insurance Insider. And when Carnegie Brown was asked how are we going to work and evolve into the future as insurance entities, this is the big market picture, is about we've been very good at damage. We've been very good at insuring people's buildings and assets when they get damaged, in our case crash, and the people and lives involved. What we need to develop more is the insurance of intangible assets. And what comes to mind lately, and everybody will see the headlines, is business interruption. That's specifically in the world of intangible assets. If your business cannot run and you lose money, who's helping you become whole then? And there is a product that, in fact, Falcon MGA has a product called JetSure, and that insures aircraft on ground excess costs. So when a charter operator has to charter in a third-party aircraft if their aircraft is AOG on a particular day. This covers the excess cost of chartering in a third party at the last minute. This is the type of intangible asset that hits the bottom line of companies. And these are controllable costs. It's just that it's not headline news. But these
Reece,
are costs.
sorry to interrupt. I just want to get Reece in there as well. Reece, insuring intangible assets, is that the way to go?
So I certainly think there's absolutely a market for it. It's a different market to, as Zoe rightly says, to the traditional kind of physical damage, bodily injury, property damage, or loss to the actual asset itself. But for sure, innovating and coming up with product solutions that ultimately impact our aviation operators' bottom line, I think it's a great way to go.
Right. And what you're talking about in particular, Zoe, is AOG insurance.
Yes, simply put, AOG insurance. And it's not very well proliferated right now. And part of the reason why is that when I talk to operators and I say, how much did you lose? They don't use the term loss, like Amine said, you are the loss. I like that, Amine. Well, how much did you lose? They say, what do you mean? I got less money that time. That's called a loss. Earning less money when you didn't have to is tantamount to a bottom line loss.
So it's just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that. We have I'm trying to bring in some of the people in the audience. We've one question. This is for all of you, shouldn't FAQA, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, and FDM, I guess that's flight data monitoring, be considered to amortize the insurance costs? It's the best thing in safety management since decades. Reece, what do you think?
So one of my, it comes back to my original takeaway in terms of talking to your brokers and insurers. Insurers love information. We can't get enough of it, and more so than ever before. A lot of our statistical modelling and the decisions that we make on pricing and coverage is based on data and information. I know for a fact that a lot of our operators, business aviation operators, take risk management very seriously. Where there seems to be a disconnect is that information actually reaching the brokers and the underwriters. So I was on a conference call with a large European operator during lockdown, and I asked the question with regards to how they had managed the risk of their pilots now actually being outside of the what they would usually do in terms of sending them to simulator training every 12 months. They couldn't get them out of the country for their simulator training. But how were they managing that risk? And the chief pilot's eyes lit up because he had spent months, kind of blood, sweat and tears, coming up with a risk management model around this potential issue. But that never leaves the company, that information, unless someone asks for it. So that transfer of info.
I mean, surely our members are becoming more sophisticated from a safety point of view, and I'd imagine there's a need to join the dots between these sort of initiatives and the insurance industry. But what you're telling me, and maybe so you could come in on this as well, is that that link hasn't really been made yet.
The link between
increased data-driven safety protocols at our members and insurance costs.
Yeah, and well, I have spoken to people about that actually in terms of fleet management systems. What somebody said to me was, well, before an aircraft lands, you might be able to you should very well, ideally, know that that aircraft could be AOG next. So therefore, you can plan ahead. So really, I think where it could come in really is about timing issues, reducing the time to react to any incidents or technical needs. So we're not talking about physical damage here, but in terms of ensuring intangible assets, being able to react more quickly or ahead of time, like AI, like knowing what's going to happen next.
Okay, I get it. One blunt question. Will premiums increase in business aviation throughout this year and into next year?
I'm not going to answer that question in the sense that I don't believe that's within the scope of the antitrust laws that govern the EBAA. So I won't be answering that question.
I mean, I think once we're not talking about individual pricing and so on, I think we're sort of within our antitrust rules. We're talking about general trends within the market. But if you don't want to answer that, that's perfectly fine. Zoe.
I knew you were going to do that.
No, Paul, I can come in between. First of all, Reece, you know, we don't know because we don't know in 6 months how much will be the value of money. But
Right. This is the thing. What?
yeah, but we, you know, in order to control the premium, we should control the risk. Zoe had a beautiful talk, and you, Reece, was talking about data. Data is very important, and risk management is very important. I think that more the insurer will feel that their clients understand the risk the way the insurer is trying to understand it, then yes, premiums should go down. That's my answer.
So it's about these trends. I think it is time for us to bring up a poll. And so I think if Justine could just put up the poll there, what we're interested in finding out. And just in a very general term, if you guys can come in on this, it's great. What's the biggest risk facing business aviation today? Is it demographic shifts that will prevent companies from finding the right talent? Is it the declining market for business travel? According to our last poll, perhaps not. Is it the cost of increasing regulations that will make operators unviable? Or is it environmental concerns that will lead to higher taxes and fewer customers? So I've been throwing a lot of questions at you and you've been doing very well, so I'm going to throw this one at you as well. Big risks facing business aviation. Or, Amine?
Yes. Yes, yes.
What do you think are some of the big risks that we're going to see facing business aviation in the next, say, 10 years?
The stupidity of our governments.
Can you elaborate on that?
No. I'm just watching.
Yeah.
No, the biggest risk is stupid regulation.
Yeah.
Because all the other risks, you know, weather risk, technology, even financial crisis, we can adapt, and we are done to adapt because we can create. But when we have rules that comes out of nowhere and put us in a very stressful situation, it put the managers of all the industry, cross-fold from insurers, managers, maintenance, in a very stressful environment.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, and this is exactly what the legal said, we don't know what the future is. This is, I think, our biggest problem.
And I have to say, you know, in last week when we were talking about challenges facing the industry, I mean, this type of unpredictability with respect to regulations, that was something that came up. I think that was cited as a thing that was like really the biggest challenge. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this. I'd like to thank all of you for your contribution so far. In fact, we see that most of the participants think that it's the environmental concerns that pose the biggest risk to the sector. Fewer customers and higher taxes, 51% say that. And then after that, 30% saying it's the cost of regulations. One final question looking to the future. eVTOL, autonomous flight, even flying over congested areas. Will the insurance industry be ready to cover this type of flight? Reece?
Absolutely. I mean, we are there already in terms of the urban mobility movement and effectively transporting passengers in a built-up area autonomously. We already have, as an industry, products ready to go. I'm going to go one further, Paul, because my natural retirement age is 20. It will be in the year 2046, and if I think about the technological leaps that have occurred just in the past 10 years. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that before I retire, commercial passenger carriage to space is going to be part and a feature within the context of business aviation, because it's not scheduled airline passenger movement, and it's wealthy individuals spending tickets to fly from A to B. So in terms of the future where business aviation is concerned, whether it's urban mobility or indeed transporting passengers off of this planet, aviation insurers are there already formulating products to meet these new changing risks.
You're at the forefront, and so I don't know if people would have expected, you know, the insurance panel or the insurance committee to be so engaging, but I have to say, in terms of the work that you do at the EBAA. It's some of the most fun that we have. I'd like to mention Arthur Thomas as well, who supports a lot of this. He's doing data analysis for the EBAA and supporting this committee. But Reece, what you're saying is moving beyond just autonomous flight, space as well, and the privatization of the sector is something that the insurance industry is ready for. So that answers Thomas's question as well. I think I'm going to leave it at that, if it's okay with everybody, and we're just on time to move on to the next session. So thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Reece. Thank you, Amine. Thank you thank you to all of you for your contribution. And now, just before we move on to our technology panel, I'd just like to make reference to one member in particular. So, you know, we've got a lot of people in the EBAA who are making a contribution to the associate membership, but there's one in particular, Joe Buckley, is moving on from Shannon Airport after 42 years of service there. And in that, he's really done a lot. It's gone from promoting US pre-clearance at Shannon Airport to figuring out a way to circumvent rules at the NBAA base show in order to distribute alcohol. So I'd just like to give some recognition to Joe. Thank you for everything that you've done. If we could do maybe a virtual round of applause. I don't know if that's a thing, but maybe we could make it a thing. And Joe is going to continue supporting the industry, supporting the EBAA. So we're looking forward to what we see next from him. And so with that, we are now moving to technology. And I'm very happy to introduce the two chairs of the EBAA's Technology Committee. They are Charlotte Rendle and Paolo Sommariva. Charlotte? Paolo?
Hi, how are you doing, Paul? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, fairly good. We actually had a bit of an insurance issue. My wife is trying to figure it out downstairs. We bumped the car yesterday, but aside from that, everything's fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Enjoying the content of the webinar. Some great info from the insurance guys. So,
okay, great. And Paolo, how's life?
Hi, Paul. Hi, Charlotte.
Hey, Paolo.
And thank you so much, Paul. I think you've been doing a great job at this. And so, as also I change hat, the chairman of the AMAC, thank you so much for organizing this flawless series. So before it comes to an end very shortly, I think this is an amazing thing that you've put together with all these speakers. So anyway, let's go on with.
Thanks very much, Paolo. Let's touch wood on the flawless side. I'm massively superstitious about that, especially during the tech panel. I mean, this is the riskiest one. All right, just to not so long to go yet. My question on the operations side, we haven't seen that much innovation in business aviation. I mean, we can take Avinode, we can take NetJets. Is this industry fundamentally resistant to change, Charlotte?
I don't think it's the industry. I think the biggest threat is the change to their mindset. I think mindset is the biggest issue and the biggest challenge, because there's an element of how, because things have always been done that way, there is a fear of change. There's a number of different scenarios and systems out there that can actually help with the technology. But the key thing here is, I think the current market conditions with COVID has actually put people into a situation where they have to look at their own, how they operate the business and what they can do in terms of making cost savings and process changes and improve complexity, you know, less complex tasks. And people are actually now starting to look at technology. So I think it is helping with changing the mindset of people of how technology can actually help throughout the industry.
I mean, on a previous webinar, Adam Twill said that we're the most exciting industry going, and we're talking about new technology, new avionics, new aircraft. This is where all the excitement should be. We're at the forefront. It's not happening in the flight department, though. We're years behind other sectors. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so, and I think because I mean, looking from a flight department's operations, now we can change a lot of the processes and we can automate them. So Paolo probably won't mention Flex, but I can. So the Flex platform.
I hope you haven't planned that.
No, I haven't.
I'm going to mention RDC.
No, I'm going to mention RDC.
Right.
Don't worry.
Fair enough.
So basically, with the Flex platform, it will pull the quote down from Avinode, With the amount of integrations that are in there, RDC, obviously we integrate the airport charges information in. That will then give you, help calculate a more accurate quote. The quote's done in a much speedier process. It goes out to the customer. If you then need to arrange your crewing or the FBO or any of the handling or anything like that, all of that can actually be automated and processed now. The difference is it's not there to replace individuals. It's where we actually, where can people add value? And I think that's a key thing. It's about looking at how technology can improve process and actually look and move people to where they can actually add value within the department's flight department operations.
And if you take the landscape of business aviation operators in Europe, there are different estimates of the number, 900. If you take into account that some of these are under the umbrella of larger operators, maybe 600. What percentage of these are using, let's say, the procedure and the technology that you've just spoken about?
It's a tough one to actually, have a specific answer. I would potentially think only about 20% are using a lot of the processes.
And is that across large and small operators, or is it just the small ones?
No, I would suggest that's across all of it, because there are a number of larger operators that don't take advantage of the technology that's out there because they have their own bespoke systems that were built from inception and haven't actually moved on as technology has evolved. So I think there's a lot more technology out there for individuals, and it's not just available to the bigger players. It is available to all levels and sizes of company. It's really important that everybody has the same opportunity.
But is this actually about? Is it like we know that the technology is there, but is this actually about technology at all?
Well, it's 50-50. Well, I'd probably say 80-20, 80% mindset, 20% that they don't know about the technology. And there's not huge amounts of technology players within the industry. But
that they don't know about it, or that they don't have the mindset to really embrace it?
That they don't know about it.
I have another take, if I may.
Yeah, go on, Paolo.
Yeah, Paolo. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So I won't mention this. Aviation is conservative by nature, and I think that's really where the misunderstanding lies. And it must be conservative, right? It's all about safety. So we build planes and we fly them, and the one thing that we have in our mind constantly, day in and day out, is safety. So we cannot make mistakes. Now, when you go to Silicon Valley and you talk to startups, there's people that have t-shirts that says, make mistakes. Why? Yeah. Because that's all about innovation. You have to make mistakes. Kids learn to run by falling down, right? And this is very much what we practice in this company here. We make mistakes all the time because we're breaking down walls, we're innovating and building technology that innovates. So these two cultures really don't mix. We have limitations on what we can do. So if we talk about business models, it's probably about the execution of the given business model and within the safety factors that you can innovate. And it's a very, very well set perimeter. So complexity, Charlotte just mentioned, and Julia mentioned it several times. I heard it come over and over again in these talks. There is a lot of complexity all across. There is speed, because this is a market where execution needs to be very fast, and there is compliance because of safety. And so when you put all these three things together at the same time, it's basically impossible to do it by hand. And that's where you need to have technology that runs that, right? So the point is, I think, and I'm very glad to see here that we'll also see Pascal and Diego on top of, along with Charlotte. It's all about integrating the various services in the industry because all of the functions need to be managed by technology to achieve that speed and that reliability, that compliance with the aviation complexity.
But I mean, when you talk about all of these different factors which feed into, let's say, the conservatism in the industry, I mean, we're not talking about things that are even that ambitious. I mean, I can't remember the last time I booked a hotel by sending a hotel an email, but as I understand it, when it comes to operators or charter brokers booking and handling, a lot of the time it's just email to email, no real platform to streamline that.
Right. We're talking indeed about very, very simple things. Though, if you take one feature which I demoed online actually 3 months ago because it was new, it's no longer new. It's we have a scanner for passports, right? So if an unexpected passenger shows up on the ramp, the pilot can just take the passport and put it in front of the phone, and that passport is recorded. The passenger is actually recorded in the flight. Automatically, all the documents relevant to that flight are updated and reprinted if needed. The ops people back in the office know that there is another passenger. It's automatically checked against the TSA no flight list, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, how is that useful? Well, you can do all that stuff by hand. In fact, we do it by hand, right? Except that you do it in half a second versus 2 or 3 minutes. What are 2 or 3 minutes? Not much, but it's repeated day in and day out for thousands and millions of flights.
And it's this type of piecemeal improvement that really can gradually over time make the difference. One aspect of this that I wanted to bring in, and it's actually, I'm being reminded about this because there's a question in the comments there, and I got actually a comment from a member today. We're talking about innovation. So it's a very conservative industry, but at the same time, it's one that generates a lot of excitement. And there has been a lot of investment in B2C models for booking flights and so on. And one quote from a member I got is that hundreds of millions of dollars have disappeared into poorly researched B2C follies. We're talking about just being able to book a flight via an app. Paolo, why has this not worked yet?
I love that question. And first of all, lots of money has been poured in because that's where the money starts, right? That's you want to be at the top of the sales cycle, right, where the money comes into the market, and that's a very nice thought. But the issue is that it doesn't work unless you have the entire back end supporting that process. And in this case, it's not just the logic of the back end, it's all about the data that RDC provides, but also many other players like Aviation as well. You need to bring all that data together in order to provide automated pricing. We're very close to that. And I think that today we can actually, from my perspective, we can do 20% of the flights in an automated fashion. There's another 20% at the other end that will never be able to automate because they're just too complex. And so over the next years, what we see is increasing from a small 20% of flights that can be automated and bring more and more as we accumulate more data and reliable data and connect it to the various parts of the logic of pricing.
So what you're saying is that building an app is possible, fairly straightforward. Finding some customers, more difficult, but possible as well. But essentially, the operators weren't ready for this.
Building the app in itself is a fairly straightforward exercise. Building the logic that gives you the exact pricing that's reliable every time or almost every time, what's reliable on average, that's another story. And
but just to pick up on the question, but that is because the operators weren't ready for it. They weren't equipped to be able to.
I agree with that. Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
Okay.
The thing is that it's a new technology, and it's that weird feeling of relinquishing the control after having sent millions and millions of quotes for decades, and saying, okay, these quotes we're not going to look at. So I give you an example, right? Because it's a lot simpler to see it like that. So if you have a CJ2 that flies from Geneva to Paris on a random Monday morning, what's the price for that? Everybody knows it. If you have a CJ2 based in Geneva or in Paris, you know exactly how much that is. Whenever you get a request for that, it takes you one second to know the price. And then it takes you another 10 minutes to bring together the whole quote and send it, right? So you want a computer that actually will answer instantly, taking 0 of your time. Now, take the same route, but it's on an evening, and it's the day before, it's the evening before the Roland Garros final. How much is that worse? Well, that's complicated now, right? You need to see what is the traffic. Is there COVID around, right? Who is playing in the final tomorrow? And so the demand and offer equation is going to become a lot more complex. That is difficult to solve, and I'm not sure when and if and how we're going to be able to solve it. But the CJ2 that flies every Monday morning, that can be done today. And so we need to have some operators that are willing to try their chance and trust the system and get on board the automated pricing bandwagon, which I expect over the next years to be a runaway.
I mean, I'm happy to see that you're optimistic about it, and just because some of these companies seem to have gone quiet doesn't mean that the whole project has disappeared. One comment from Peter Evans. Hi Peter, how are you doing? It's not rocket science, they are marginal gains. Other industries embrace them, but BizAv seems reluctant. I guess you'd agree with that, Paolo? Or maybe not. Or no comment, or your mic's not working. Paolo, you're uncharacteristically quiet. Sure. I want, as we're moving on for that, but thanks for the comment, Peter. I would like to bring on Sophie Nordland. If we could get Sophie Nordland up, she, I think, has a question about cybersecurity, and this will be the first time that we've turned an attendee into a panelist. So let's see if that's worked. Sophie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's like a call-in radio show. Tell me your problem.
Did I win something? So no, I just wanted to tie up with the previous subject, touching on insurance and the fact that all these sophisticated industries are also vulnerable to cyber attacks and the failures of the IT itself. And I think that one of the innovations that we can bring as insurers is to alert the stakeholders that there are products that are available for them to protect themselves against their own losses, against the losses of private information for their clients, business interruptions, their liability to clients. And these are all very important insurance products that may not be very costly at the moment, but that could have enormous benefits for the industry.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Sophie, I mean, from a regulatory point of view, cybersecurity is one of the things that we spoke about in last week's webinar. And I'm not sure if the community in business aviation is fully aware of the consequences of that. So it's good to see that the insurance industry is paying attention for that. So thanks very much. We're going to move on now because there's another question there from Adam Twiddle. Hi, Adam. And I'd also like to introduce Pascal Meyer from Ops Horizon, and this question I think fits with what Pascal is trying to do. So Adam asks, what technology should the FBOs and airports be introducing to help aircraft operators? Pascal, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. Yes, so to answer to Adam, in fact, with technology, we can link systems. We can link the FBO systems, like what we do with my handling, with operators systems, like Flex or others. And thanks with this link, we call it API, but to make it easy, it's just making softwares communicating with each other without the hand of a human in between. So thanks with it, you don't lose information. You don't lose information between the software of the operator, and you don't lose information with the huge amount of emails that you can receive as an FBO.
So, I mean, it's essentially the same topic that we've just been talking about. And what again, you know, why is the market slow to take this up, if it is indeed slow to take this up?
I don't think it's slow. I think it's moving now. If you think about the business aviation, a few years ago, for one flight, you could have hundreds of emails, sometimes for just one flight. And now, with operators that have moved, that have switched to the APIs and to softwares, it's no emails at all. So in fact, you just have an information, a pop-up, a flag, and it's you just improve the communication in between operators and FBOs.
Okay. No, I mean, it sounds obvious. As I said, I mean, this is really what's happening in other industries.
If I may, Paul.
Jump in there, Paolo, please.
Yeah, because I have feedback from our customers that they're really happy about the integration with my handling because they have much less work to do, right? The information flows directly from ops to the handler, and there is a back and forth, and that back and forth entails 0 emails, right? Everybody's got the latest information on hand, and there's a perfect handshake directly between software. So I think that this is a perfect example where you have heterogeneous players, the operators on one side and handlers, operators of airports on the other, where they can communicate entirely via software without ever wasting a second.
Okay, thanks, Paolo. So I'm going to introduce Diego as well. Diego, are you online on this topic of airports and FBOs? What sort of technological developments do you think are needed there in order, let's say, to support operators? Hi, Diego.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks, Paul. Well,
and Diego, it should be noted that you have won the competition for the best.
Not sure who can see that, but
hands down. Well done.
Well,
tell me.
For airports, I think if I look at it on a data perspective, where we get data about airports nowadays is the AIP. AIPs are incomplete, in my opinion, in terms of what data they carry that are useful actually to planning. Here we're talking about an operator going to any airport in the world. It can even be the airport they know the best, Nice, that they go there every day. It's been already mentioned. But do you know exactly on that day, because of those events, because of work in progress, is the airport going to be open? So what a dispatcher, what an operator, a salesman is going to do is we'll have to check documentation, check NOTAMs. Most of the times what it do is pick up the phone and call the handlers that will know exactly what's going on the airport. Whilst if you had a very reliable source of data that would come out of ideally the airport operator, or even contributed by the FBO in a common framework, so something that other software can understand and it's standardized, then when a salesman starts a quote, immediately gets a pop-up that airport's going to be closed, or there's going to be just one runway instead of 2, expect delays, or a royal movement, or whatever is the case. But the key here is, Pascal was saying it right, exchange data software to software, and I would add a little break on that, which is exchange data software to software, but for the software to understand it. So not just a piece of text to display to a human, but actually data that is in a format so that the software can take an automated decision or help a human take a decision. So that's the little addition that I would put on there.
And if I may underscore that.
Just one sec, Paolo. Is this what's needed, or is this what already exists?
This does not exist. So when I was saying AIPs, they are distributed in PDF forms. At best, you can get them in XML, which is a way computers can represent information. But the information that are put in there are not standardized in the formats. So you're again writing you're telling to a computer these are the opening times, but then within that field you're not making the computer understand it. It's for a human to read again. So that's lacking.
Okay, so is it a type of standardization that would allow this to? Okay.
Standardization and availability, because nowadays, even if you just want to get this data, it's very complex to get it in a digital format from the regulators directly.
Okay, so it doesn't sound insurmountable.
No.
Paolo, tell me.
Yeah, I was just going to underscore that the standardization of the data is so important. There's so many different sources, and we're so grateful to RDC and AviaWiki for providing our customers with data which has two characteristics, because this is something that that's widely misunderstood. First of all, there's information and data. Data is something that the computer can read. Information is something that the human and the computer can read. And the difference is, if I have a text field, and there's loads of databases out there full of text fields, and the text field, the human can read it, and you can write, hey, Geneva Airport on Saturdays at the beginning of the month, open at 8 in the morning. That's really nice. The computer doesn't know what to do with it. It could parse it and figure it out, but that's a little bit complicated. And so this is the first part. And RDC and AviaWiki are building data sources out of information. And I know that RDC, they go through these PDFs are full of text that are provided by airports. It's an amazing job that they do, right? And they transform it into data. And the second part of it is, once you have data, it has to be according to a standard, right? So if you go on different databases, you're going to find that aircraft types, for example, have all sorts of acronyms. So is this a Falcon 2000, or is it a Falcon or of some other kind? And that's really, really difficult for the operators, our customers. And they've started years ago this work, and I think that this is fundamental in allowing all the people that provide the logistics, the logic for running the logistics, like us and like my handling, for giving the completeness that operators need to automate their operations.
It's almost like an industry-wide initiative. Now, another thing that we've spoken about is just the financial health of operators. Let's say the EBA's full members. Last week in our poll, this was cited as the biggest challenge facing the industry. Is technology the answer here, Charlotte?
I think technology can help. It's not necessarily the answer to all of the issues. I think the main issues are the complexity of the tasks that are being conducted. Productivity, again, is an issue, and the speed of which things are done. This is where technology plays in, and it plays its part, because we can answer all of those questions through the different platforms that we have available. SaaS, software as a service, is a perfect tool to help solve the issues, but it's not the only issue. We're back to mindset again, I think, with regards to how things go.
We're talking about people, and I think Sean in the question and answer, he's got a question about that. What do you do to address that? What do you do to address this behavioral challenge?
It's a tough one, and I think it's something that, as an industry, we have to all try and change. It's about being able to highlight the fact that it is there to make things easier and more streamlined, and it's not just to replace people, and it's not as scary as some people think, and it's not a threat to the actual way things have been done. It's about being able to highlight.
And on top of that, it's going to make them more profitable, right?
Exactly. I think a lot of it is the fear of the unknown, to a certain degree. It's a tough one. We're trying to change it, but it's it's a slow burn, if you like, on changing the mentality.
Absolutely, thanks, Charlotte. Paolo, this is something that we've spoken about as well. Something else very basic is just financial reporting, which you would imagine could have an impact. And I have actually asked you this already. I'm going to ask you again. Is this are you getting these requests for financial financial reporting software from operators?
Yes, this is something, yeah, I remember we talked about it a while back. It's something that has surprised me and still surprises me. The one part of our software that nobody ever asks anything about is the reporting session. And that's where the output of all your work, of the work of the entire company, comes together. Yeah. And so if I'm the CEO, I want to know in my company what happened today, what happened in the past week, in the past month, and try and figure out if there's trends for the next week, the next month. I need to have a number of KPIs. And this is what we produce. And strangely enough, everybody looks at a lot of features. Typically, this is pushed down the ranks to people who use the software. But the ones that get the most profit out of the software is actually not those using it to automate their tasks. It's those that make the decisions, that don't have currently all the information right there at their fingertips, on their desk, on their screen, to call those decisions in real time, right? And this to me is the biggest advantage that technology actually provides, regardless of the business model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people are but it seems remarkable that people are not interested in this. I mean, I think it says something about the challenge that we're facing.
Yeah. So this I think is the macro effect is having an industry which is making decisions on the basis of few parameters. Based on experience rather than current knowledge. I like to say almost every day, and they laugh around me here in the office because I say it continuously, you cannot improve what you don't measure, right? And so we have so many times a gut feeling, let's do that thing, it looks good. And that just doesn't work. It doesn't work in business, it doesn't work in aviation, right? You wouldn't fly a plane with a gut feeling. You want to know the parameters, right? You do runway analysis before you take off. And so I think that you should do runway analysis before you take off your business in the morning.
Diego, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, sure.
Or indeed, if you want to talk about the behavioral challenge, this mentality shift that we'd like to see taking place.
Yeah. So on Sean's question, Sean's very good in asking tough questions.
This is Sean from Fly Easy, right?
Yes. So I believe strongly that one of the issues that we have in business aviation specifically is the fact that people are very secretive about what's going on. And, we talked about it in the insurance part before. Reece put it very, very well. There's tons of data being collected with flight data monitoring, with loads of reporting. This is not shared because of some fear of interference, of spying or whatever that is. This secrecy is introducing a lot of issues because we're not sharing data and we are being very, very private about it. So changing this behavior, in my opinion, is what would drive also adoption of technology and explain that things don't necessarily need to be so secret. What we are doing specifically, what I can say from my side is, our data has also a sort of a freeware. So if you want to go as a human on the website and look at the data, we don't think that's, as a human serving you data for free is actually adding a lot of value. The value is if we serve it to the software, so you don't pay for that. We try to encourage people to contribute So if you know something about an airport as an FBO, you can contribute and make your company more visible and try to create this ecosystem. So giving back a little bit, I think, is part of the game. It's difficult in some businesses, some parts of the business, but it can be done.
I think so. I mean, essentially, it sounds like you're putting things on the agenda for the technology committee at the EBAA. It's that type of a common neutral forum where, if we take the example of safety, I think it's very good. It's very easy to get the safety guys to work together. When it comes to the commercial side of things, it's more difficult. But essentially, I think there is a common interest there, something to keep us busy. So I just want to make sure that everybody is getting heard. I'm trying to keep up with all of the comments, but there are many, which is great. I want to see if there are any companies out there that have had experience with integrating new software to get kind of the input from the consumer side. And maybe there is one company in Lithuania, Jet Maintenance Solutions, that wanted to come in on that. So if you are there, please stick up your hand. I'm going to read out a comment from Maxime from Skylegs. In our experience, operators are not reluctant to change, but often lack the resources to make impact change, which affects their operations. And it's a bit of a paradox. They want to save costs by implementing new aviation management, but they don't have resources to cope with the transition. And funnily enough, this is the question that I should have asked earlier. So thanks, Maxime, for that. COVID has created a window for the operators to put the resources in, an opportunity. Have you seen this, Charlotte? People that maybe had projects on the back burner finally with COVID were able to say, okay, we're going to make this transition.
Definitely. Within business aviation, we work across, at RDC, we work across both commercial aviation and business aviation. And we've seen the biggest uptake within the business aviation industry. But I think there is one thing to just point out as well, is that it's up to us as technology providers and system providers as well to ensure that we are making sure that the opportunity for all sizes of company and operators they all have the same opportunity to take the technology, and it's not just for the larger few. It has to be available for everyone, and that's the only way we're actually going to be able to revolutionize the market, I think.
Fantastic. And I know that we could cover that in a bit more depth, but we're kind of tight on time at the moment. I'm probably going to go slightly over time on this one. I hope that's okay with everybody. We had 2 panels here in the previous webinars. We've had 3 panels here, so we just have a little bit of flexibility. There are a couple of things, so I might just go a little bit over time, if that's okay, Justine. Let's see. We're going to put up a poll now, and this is one of these thinking ahead, thinking towards the future type of polls. Again, I think a lot of this will be guesstimation. What will have the biggest impact on business aviation in the next 30 years? Single pilot operations, eVTOL, electric aircraft, direct online flight booking, or sustainable aviation fuel? Diego, what do you think?
Whoa.
Just first, what jumps out at you?
I'm gonna go with the eVTOL.
eVTOL, Charlotte?
I'm going to go with SAF, actually. I
Great.
think SAF will be the biggest change.
We just had come off a fantastic SAF webinar with the NBAA and other associations this week. Pascal?
I think I agree with Diego, eVTOL.
And Paolo?
Right. Well, I think they're all correct, really.
Yeah.
And they will all have an impact. And these impacts are going to be staggered over time. So I think the direct online flight booking is something that's already coming very fast. We're going to see it in the next months of years, depending on how much we can stimulate the operator appetite. Single pilot operations, well, they're very much already here, right? There is a lot of PC-12s that are flying single pilot. Maybe they fly two pilots, but they could fly single. And now eVTOL and electric aircraft I put in the same bag. It's a bit like self-driving cars, right? When are they going to be actually flying? Difficult to say, but I think it's less than 10 years. And that is going to have a huge impact, not on the upper part of the market, where we're still going to have long range and large aircraft flying around. But I think that on the lower part of the market for smaller planes and shorter range, then that's going to have a huge impact. Not so much in substituting the services that we have, but it's going to add on to business aviation. And I think that we have so much experience here that we should figure out ways to collaborate with the world, which is really a technology world. Yeah, these are people that just build little motors and plastic molds and figure out how these things are going to fly vertically, horizontally, and even transition in flight. But they don't know how to actually file a flight plan, right?
Paolo, I'm going to take that as the final word. I know that we could go on further. Business aviation needs to embrace eVTOL, with it the EBAA as well. I think that's a great way to end our Rethinking Business Aviation webinars. Thank you to all of the panels. I was going to read out the results of the poll again, but I think electric aircraft was seen as the having the biggest impact on business aviation according to the panelists. That's us. That's our 3 webinars. I'd like to thank, first of all, Justine. Justine is like a swan, serene and in control on the surface, but paddling like mad underneath. She has ensured this technical delivery of the webinar, and I don't know what these webinars would be like without her, or indeed what the EBA will be like. So thank you, Justine. It's also Justine's birthday today, so happy birthday and congratulations. And I think one thing that's just keeping me going, thinking about the 18th of May 2021 at the Duke in Geneva. The industry is booming because all those wealthy people that could afford business aviation are now actually using business aviation for health and safety reasons. And so everything's going well. We're having these discussions and we're seeing each other face to face again. So I hope that we get to that point. I'd like to thank all of the panelists. I'd like to thank all of the AMAC participants. I'd like to thank everybody who made a comment, everybody who joined in. We will have more webinars and online events coming up in safety quite shortly, so stay tuned for that. We're always available for your input and your questions. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Paul. Happy birthday.